Hey guys, welcome back. Eric Smith here, contributor on the Five Reasons Sports Network, also the current co-host of the Scouting Combine with Hassan Patel. But, stay tuned in the future for some possible changes with that podcast. Here we are, end of season. Every play has been graded for the Miami Dolphins offensive lineman for the entire 2024 season. And as you can see at the top right here, that's right at 5,700 grades for the season. And a quick review of how that grading system works, which does continue to evolve. Every play is reviewed, and a player is given a grade of a 0, a zero point 0.5, or a 1, unless they didn't do anything. An example of that would be they're on the backside of a screen and they don't even touch anybody on the play. So then the sum of that grade is divided by the count of the plays, and that gives you the raw grade. And before this season, too many people wanted to compare that to an academic grade. So, for example, an 85% may sound pretty good, but for an NFL offensive lineman, that's a pretty awful day. So, beginning this season, I came up with a formula that both compares it to previous grades that I've handed out and converts it to a 10-point scale. As a whole, the 2024 offensive line was better than the 2023 offensive line. So the 2024 grades were consistently higher. I didn't get quite the effect that I was looking for, but we'll continue to work on that. As you can see in the top right here, the overall grade for the offensive line came in at an 8.31. All right, with all that out of the way, our first goal heading into this offseason is to do a self-evaluation to see how our guys performed. What were they good at? Where did they struggle? And with this in mind, I decided to try to use the data points that I track from my grading system to see if I could come up with something useful. And this is the first run at that attempt. I asked you guys who you wanted to see first, and it made sense that the most popular pick was Patrick Paul. However, his is a little more challenging because he played both left and right tackle. And as I get into this breakdown, I think you'll understand why doing his review will be a little more challenging. Someone else suggested doing Terron Armstead first because I think we can pretty much unanimously agree when he's on the field, he's performing at a high level. So, in a way, he can be a starting point or a barometer as we look at other players. One of the bigger challenges with grading offensive linemen on individual skills is that sometimes they only get a few chances at a certain type of block through an entire season. So it's not really enough to form a solid opinion using this type of grading system. An example of that for Terron would be crack toss plays run to his side, to the left side. In 2023, Miami did that 21 times. But in 2024, they only did it 5 times. Plays like crunch, wham, pin and pull, these are all concepts that Miami ran in 2024, but they didn't run them enough that we can really say how good or bad they were in those concepts. Screenplays, even though we ran a lot of them, and they're another one that I didn't include in the tracking or in the grades, because my tracking doesn't really say who is leaking out to get in front of the screen versus who was just trying to influence a defender upfield. And those are, very different asks. So they are graded on those plays, but they're not included in this type of breakdown video. So all of that to say, when you look at Terron and the 770 snaps that were graded to get to his 8.72 grade, we're not going to talk about every blocking concept. And as we get into snap counts for the play concepts, that we can look at individually, it's not going to add up to 770 graded snaps. As we start to look at Terron's breakdown, you're going to see here that his pass block grade was higher than his run block grade. And while I haven't gone through and done this breakdown for every player individually yet, I think that's a trend that we're going to see across the entire offensive line. As we start to look at the pass protection here, we're going to keep it pretty basic. Our slide left protection for Terron, so that's going to be when protection is sliding to his side. And what we're going to get is that's a half slide. It can be a 3/4 slide. It can be a full slide. But the main thing here is that he's going to have help to the inside. So in this case, you got Rob Jones. It's also going to be sliding to the left. And off the snap here, you're going to see that Rob Jones is kind of peeking out here to help Terron on the inside. So Terron can be a little more focused on if the guy tries to take that speed rush and go to the outside. But that's the type of stuff that we're looking at with a slide left protection. The flip side of that is going to be your slide right protections. And when we look at those, it's just going to be the same thing, but the opposite way. But the idea here is that now he doesn't get that help. So when the ball snapped here, you're going to see Aaron Brewer is going to the right, which is going to be that Rob Jones is man on man with this guy, and that Terron is man on man with the end. Sometimes you'll get a chip, but for the most part, it is the tackle one on one. And now he's got to be equally aware of whether the defensive end is trying an inside or an outside move here. And as usual with Terron, you can see that he does a really good job even when he's left on an island. And I think you're going to see that, most players are going to do better when the protection is slid to their side. It means they're getting a little bit of help from the inside, especially for the offensive tackles. Whereas when the protection is sliding away, that's where you're going to see guys more on an island. Tehran is obviously pretty good at both of them, but this may be somewhere that as we look at other guys, there may be a bigger gap between when help is being slid to them versus away from them. Now we're going to get into the run block stuff. And the first one we're going to look at is the front side of an outside zone run. And this is a pretty prominent concept for the Dolphins. They've come out and said that this is something they want to be able to do. And what we're going to get here is that, basically everybody is going to be stepping to the left, and your offensive tackle is either going to be trying to get out to the defensive end or trying to combo with the guard up to a linebacker. And in this clip, we're going to see Terron comboing up through to the linebacker, right? But still outside zone to the left. You can see the tracks of the back here. Terron is getting to the outside. Would like to see better from Jones, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? But idea here, climbing to the next level, sealing that linebacker, and carrying out his assignment. As we look at tackles going forward in this system, you know, Terron is exactly what you would want in that sense. And, we see some of the flashes from Patrick Paul in that sense. And this is something that Austin Jackson does well when he's on the field also. But it'll be interesting to see how their grades come in this, front side, outside zone concept. The flip side of that is going to be the backside of the outside zone. And this is a little bit of an easier block typically. So, again, I think we're going to see that the tackles are going to grade better on the backside of outside zone versus the front side of it. And as we look at the play here, so this is going to be an outside zone to the right. And we're going to get Terron getting upfield and trying to cut off that linebacker. And even though he doesn't get his hands on him, right? Just making him go back door where he's not able to scrape over top and try to get to this play. If everybody handles business on the front side, this is a plenty good enough block. But as you can see, while it takes good athleticism, this is not as hard of a block as when you're on the front side of an outside zone. All right, so if we talk about outside zone and the horizontal displacement that you try to create, then we talk about inside zone, then we're talking about more of a vertical displacement. So first we're going to look at here for inside zone and duo is going to be the front side of that. And on this, we're going to see that the running back's going to come in motion, right? They're cannon the play that we've talked about before. Right now, the path of the running back is going to be to the left, right down here towards the guard. So this is a inside zone left, even though this play is going to cut back, right? But still starting to the left. This is inside zone left. The tackle on this play on the front side, so Terron Armstead here, is has a fairly simple assignment in the sense that most of the time he's just going to be sealing that defensive end outside. Now you can have examples where that end will slant inside and the play will bounce. But the majority of the time we're talking about front side of inside zone for a tackle. This is what you're getting here, where the tackle is just sealing him to the outside. The flip side of that is going to be the backside of inside zone. You can see this is one of the concepts where Terron graded a little lower compared to what he did with most concepts. And part of the reason for that is, you know, instead of trying to get outside and get vertical or a horizontal movement, here you can see that on the backside here, usually going to be dealing with somebody that's in a 4-eye technique or a head up. Here we've got a 5 technique defensive end, right? But the idea here is that we're just not letting him cross face, and we're trying to get some vertical push here with which Tron does, falls off at the end there, but gets enough vertical push to get the running back in the end zone. But you can see how this is a different block than some of the other ones we've talked about. And when we talk about blocks that are not the same, right? This is the type of stuff that we're talking about. This is a very good example of a block where we're trying to get vertical push, where we need a little more power versus the horizontal push that we see on the outside zone plays. And then just a couple more concepts that we're working through here. So next one is going to be a down block. So this is going to be on the front side of a long trap or a counter. Basically, the tackle, and as we look at the video on this one, I actually realized that I grabbed one of Patrick Paul instead of Terron Armstead. So we're looking at the right side here. So these down blocks is, basically they're trying to create a wall to kick out outside of that wall, and the end of that wall in many cases is going to be this tackle to the front side. So you can see everybody here is blocking down. We've got Rob Jones coming across on what we're hoping to be a kick out. Doesn't do a great job. And Julian Hill leading through, right? But when we're looking at the tackle, what we want to see is him creating horizontal or 45-degree movement here and washing that defensive tackle usually out of the play. You see that Patrick Paul does a good job of that. And this is another one that Terron Armstead does a good job with as well. All right, and then last blocking concept we're going to discuss is just a cutoff block. So this is the backside of that, right? So if your guard is pulling and you're just trying to cut off the defender, we call it a fill block, trying to fill that space that the guard is leaving when they pull. So as we look at that, this is going to be Terron on the backside. We're going to get Rob Jones pulling here. And this is a, fairly simple block most of the time. You can see that he's not even challenged in that regard, but you can, understand that the guard is pulling. So if 57 did slant inside, then Armstead would be responsible for it. But these are the type of blocks that we look at when we're talking about, backside cutoffs on long trap, counter, those type of plays. So that's all the grades that we have, right? And like I said from the beginning, the idea is trying to get kind of a more comprehensive picture as to what these guys are good at and where they need to improve. When we talk about Terron Armstead individually, he's good at most things, and the grades kind of show that. The pass blocking is very good in both senses. Your outside zone stuff, which is, why Tehran was brought here, those are both very good. Your inside zone, especially on the backside, getting that vertical push is somewhere that he's, I don't want to say bad at, right? But that's somewhere that if he was going to stick around, you'd like to see some improvement. The down blocks where he's trying to block down versus getting that vertical movement is another place that he's good at. And then the cutoff blocks, just using his athleticism to get in front of those defenders, is another thing that he is really good at, both when you look at the outside zone and the power concepts. All right, that's going to pretty much wrap it up. This is my first off season doing video reviews from the very beginning of the off season. So I need to get an idea of what you guys want to see. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Was this too much detail? And you'd prefer just to see the grades for multiple individuals on each video so we can move on to other topics? Was this not enough and you want to see more detail? Do you have other suggestions? As always, I appreciate you guys watching and the interactions these videos have brought.